Hi guys, today we are at Pecos Pueblo for another virtual field trip. We're going to learn about the Pecos people who lived here before the Spanish got here, as well as when they got here and settled and created their missions here in New Mexico. So before the Spanish ever even discovered New Mexico, ever even came up north, Pecos Pueblo was this thriving trade center of across the West. Not only did they trade with other pueblos, they were also able to trade with people from across the mountains on the Great Plains. And they were able to bring these two different worlds of nomadic indigenous people and the or completely sedentary people of the pueblos together, and they were able to trade with the people all the way from Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and they brought goods here and traded with the Pueblo people, as well as Pueblo people trading in Pecos with those other people, even from other different pueblos. So before the Spanish, before they ever settled in this part of New Mexico, the Pueblo people already had an incredibly advanced and established religion. This religion involved these really cool things called kivas, which were holes in the ground that they had built up and created sacred spaces for them to go to pray and perform ceremonies and to exist in. These were incredibly sacred places for them and were the center of their religion. So this pueblo has long fallen into ruins, but if you look around us, you can see these hills that are actually the melted adobe remains of the old multi-story buildings that were here. These buildings housed people, life, and this booming trade center of the West. As you can see right here, we have one of those kivas that was used for the center of ceremonial and spiritual life in the pueblo. In 1541, Spain finally made it up to New Mexico and decided to settle. However, they weren't exactly subtle about the way they want to think about things. They had one goal in mind, and that goal was to convert the people of the pueblos to Catholicism. The first Franciscan friars who came to Pecos Pueblo smashed kivas, icons, and banned Pueblo ceremonies. They took a very aggressive approach to this conversion. So obviously the Pecos Pueblo was not super thrilled with these friars coming in and absolutely destroying everything associated with their spirituality and religion. So they did not take super kindly to the friars that had come in for them. There's actually a fun story about when the Spanish first arrived in Pecos. They decided to show them to the city of gold, took them out into the desert, and tried to leave them there to die. Once the Spanish found out, though, they punished the Native Americans who had led them out there pretty severely, like by death, and then came back and were pretty upset with the Pecos Pueblo. So tensions were high, but in 1621 they decided to send Fray Andrés Juarez to try to smooth things over. He was known for being much more chill, laid back, and accepting. So he came in and he learned about Pueblo spirituality and the ways that they worked and things they built, and then he also introduced them into Catholicism and tried to blend these two together, or at least concede a little bit. And so what we have here is the remnants of an old church. If you look here at this thing, it actually used to be a lot bigger. The first one that they built in 1625 under Fray Andrés was way bigger. It was huge. It was one of the biggest churches built in New Mexico by the missionaries coming from Spain. After Fray Andrés came, a few of the Pueblo people did convert, while others just tolerated his presence, and things did improve for a little bit. But things were still really unfair for the Native Americans who still lived here. They were forced to build the church and to begin with, as well as many of the other things the Spanish required. If we look out over here, we can see the whole sacristy that they built for the priests who resided in the church to live in. So if you notice, we have over here another reconstruction of a kiva. It's closed right now because of COVID, but normally you can actually go down there and check out what it looks like inside. This is kind of the secret to Fray Andrés' success. He didn't completely outright ban the native religion. He allowed them to continue practicing their ceremonies and rituals within their kivas. Now, whether it was because he didn't understand what they were, or because he just didn't care and didn't mind them practicing things, or because he was trying to infiltrate native religion with Catholicism is really widely out for debate. But they were still allowed to have their kivas, which led to a more peaceful time. However, things weren't peaceful forever. Like I said, the Native Americans here were in Pecos Pueblo and every pueblo were still widely mistreated, and they knew it. They came up with a plan in 1680 to drive out the Spanish. This meant there was a widespread plan which involved runners going across the state to share the plan, along with ropes tied with a countdown of days until the revolt happened. And finally, on August 10th, all the pueblos were revolted at the same time. Here in Pecos Pueblo, a few of the loyal Pueblo people who had truly converted to Catholicism helped one of the friars who lived here escape. However, the other one was killed and the church was completely decimated. 12 years later, the Spanish returned, and this time the Pueblo were sick of fighting them. When they came back, they were able to reestablish their mission, and that is the little church we see now. This one's a lot smaller than the original that was there, that was destroyed in the revolt, but this was what was created after the Spanish came back in their reconquest of New Mexico. So between war, disease, famine, and other tribes, by the 1700s, the population of Pecos Pueblo was vastly dwindling. There wasn't a lot of people left here. By 1838, the few people who were left here migrated and became part of Jemez Pueblo, which is out kind of close by Albuquerque, and is still a thriving, open, livable pueblo today. And that is the end of our Pecos Pueblo field trip. While Pecos is unique in a lot of ways, their story is pretty much spread across the pueblos in New Mexico. The ways the Spanish came, conquered, mistreated them, the way the Pueblo Revolt happened, and the reconquerization happened. That is a very similar story to all the other pueblos in New Mexico and what they experienced, and their experiences and encounters with the Spanish.